Hey folks, Malforian here, and today we're going to be discussing Star Trek Infinite, which was announced a couple of months ago, but with today being Star Trek Day, the team at Paradox have released a little bit more information about the game. They've released a short video and kind of fleshed out a little bit more of how the game's going to look and play, so we're going to take a look through this. I've seen online a lot of chatter about, is this just a reskin of Stellaris? And I think from what we've already seen, the answer's kind of yes, but there are some interesting screenshots and things that have been released, so we're going to take a look through them. Let me know what you think in the comments as we go through, and hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. But we're just going to take a look at Star Trek Infinite and basically what we think about it, and is it that much more than the New Horizons mod for Stellaris, which is amazing itself. If you've not played it, make sure to play that if you enjoy Star Trek, and especially if you enjoy Stellaris. It's a fantastic mod. But anyway, let's just get into it. So what you can see straight away here is what will you stand for. This is obviously where you choose which faction. As you can see, there's only 4 at the moment with the launch of the game. You've got obviously the Federation, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, and then the Cardassian Union. I'm not sure about the 4th one being the Cardassians, although I guess it makes sense. I mean, who else would it be? I think they're trying to save probably the Borg for an expansion. If the game does well, I would think the Borg would come along as an expansion race to play, because Stellaris does have very similar mechanics, so I think they'd be a really cool one to do an expansion based around. Obviously, the Borg being a fan favorite, I'm sure it would do very, very well. And yeah, so these are the 4 you can play as. They obviously play differently, but if you've played Stellaris, you're going to know roughly what these things do. You know, high education, diplomatic expertise, they're going to give you bonuses in those areas. Very much like if you play Stellaris, you can choose, you know, egalitarian, militaristic, things like that. So I think they're just kind of reworded versions of those starting traits that your races have in Stellaris. But I like it. I like how this looks, actually. It looks really kind of simple, but you know what's going on. A little bit of a blurb about what they are and all that stuff. So I guess if you're not a massive Star Trek fan, you can kind of get up to date about who the races are and what they're on about. And then if we look at the next screen, obviously we're straight into the UI. And yeah, it looks exactly like Stellaris, let's be honest. It is just recolored with a little bit of differences here and there. Now, one thing I would say is it looks nice. You play Stellaris, you're used to how this looks, and it looks the same, basically. I'm kind of surprised that they haven't kind of made the UI look a lot different, depending on which race you are. You'll see as we go through these, the only real major difference is the color. So Klingons are red, Federation is blue, Romulans are green. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that little bit extra to differentiate it from Stellaris, because, you know, if you loaded this up and didn't tell someone this was Star Trek Infinite, they'd be like, oh, you're playing Stellaris? Basically, because it looks the same. These icons are slightly different. You know, the fleet icons are a bit different, and the bottom icon is slightly different, but it looks like Stellaris if you played Stellaris. I'm kind of surprised they haven't changed it a little bit more. So if you play Crusader Kings, you have like the tribal UI, you have the feudal UI. It does make the UI look different if you do play in different areas. Not a massive change, but enough that I think it looks different. It's more thematic to who you're playing as. And as the Klingons, I don't know, like, you could have it look a little bit more like a Klingon UI. I think even if you just had some more of their symbols on here, maybe even just changed how it looks a little bit more. I'm not sure how. Leave a comment how you would think you would do it, but like, it just looks too much like the base UI, just with red on it. And then if we go to the Cardassian one, it's exactly the same, but everything's orange. And that's the only difference. It's just the same UI and it's orange. And then if we go to the Romulan Star Empire, again, it's the same UI, it's just a bit green. And the Federation one is just the same, and it's a little bit blue. I'm not sure why they didn't change it so that, like, the Federation one especially, as you can see here, it's just blue UI. I'm not sure why they didn't do, like, the LCARs. So if you know Star Trek, their, like, UI of how their ships look, all the controls is called LCARs. I'm surprised they didn't redo the UI to look like the LCARs UI, because that would be amazing. It would really kind of draw you in to being the Federation, because the UI would be totally different. I think the LCARs one is more, like, symbolic of the Federation, but for the other races, I'm sure you could change the UI in some way so it would look more like that race and not just the same UI in a different color. Now, I think that works in Stellaris because obviously your different races, your different combinations, and they're all made-up races and things like that, obviously apart from humans. And it kind of makes sense that UI is just a recolor, basically, depending on your choices at the beginning. I think for something like a Star Trek game, the UI should really look a lot different because they're so set in lore and like the history of the different races. It would be a lot better if it was like a totally different UI. Not like so different that you'd have to refine things, but I think like this outliner could be an LCARS layout. you could have this bottom bit look a little bit different, and again, the LCARS kind of graphics. And maybe for the Klingons, the same, but there's more like weapons or something around the UI, or just something to really differentiate it from the other races in the game itself. So I think that would make sense. I think it would make it look a lot more different from just playing Stellaris with a mod, let's be honest. So I do get where people are coming from, saying it's just a reskin of Stellaris, because as you can see from the actual mechanics themselves, it is just the Stellaris mechanics, and the most recent version of them. It'd almost be cool if they used the 1.0 mechanics for some of it, like the old planet layouts and things like that, to kind of differentiate it a little bit more. But I guess they want people who enjoy Stellaris to play it, and then obviously they want to bring in the Star Trek players. I'm not sure for Star Trek players who've never played Stellaris, is it going to be too complicated at the beginning? I think it'll be okay, but there are quite a few mechanics, especially these days, that you really need to read up about how they work and things like that. So I'm kind of surprised they haven't, not dumbed them down, but done something to get rid of some of the mechanics, maybe, like some of the resources, and kind of change how they play a little bit to maybe broaden the appeal of the game. And then if you really enjoy it, maybe you would go, okay, I'm going to play Stellaris, because it's got all these more in-depth mechanics, but also it kind of plays the same, but with obviously a wider range of races and things like that. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't change it up a little bit. I guess they just want the same game kind of between the two. It will be weird if Stellaris gets a lot of updates and reworks, and this doesn't get the same ones. If you're trying to play between the two, you're going to have to remember kind of what's different between the two of them, but we'll obviously see as the game progresses. Now, one cool feature of this game, and I didn't expect this to come at all, and I actually really enjoyed it in a previous Paradox game. Well, I say previous, we're talking about Imperator Rome, obviously a game that didn't do well at launch. The 2.0 relaunch, if you've been on the channel for any amount of time, you'll know I enjoyed that a lot. I think it was kind of criminally underrated, and I think if they just supported the game a little bit longer, would have had a chance of bringing that game back, because the 2.0 relaunch was actually a really good game. Obviously, it had some issues still, but overall, I think it was enjoyable. Now, one of the things from there was mission trees. Now, you might look at this and think, oh, this looks like EU4, or it looks like Hoi 4. I've seen something like this before, but from what we've seen, this actually plays out a little bit more like the Imperator Rome mission trees, which are a lot more, not like choose your adventure, but you could choose different ways to complete the same tree, which was really cool. And as we can see from here with the Federation one, it doesn't look super complicated. Like, there's build the Enterprise, and then I guess you get bonuses for picking these different officers, and then you get upgrade the Enterprise. Maybe you get like the Enterprise E or something. I'm not too sure. It just gets some crazy upgrades. But then on the left-hand side, there's Understand the Unknown, First Contacts, Multilateral Accords, Established Trade Routes. As you can see here with this kind of warning sign here, I imagine this will work like Imperator Rome, where you can only choose one side of it. It was really cool in that game how there'd be a mission, and maybe it was like repopulate Spain or something as the Romans, or you could leave it independent as a tributary or something like that, and then the following decisions would change how that worked. Now, what we can see from here is it looks like you can grow the Federation, and then you kind of go through like a historical, I guess, building the Federation up as a helpful place, as a nice place, as that bubbly root beer. Instead of that, you can empower Section 31. Maybe you could go into that Terran Empire kind of playthrough, like the alternate universe, which would be really nice. If this is in here, it'd be amazing. If you can branch out, oh, I want to be like a friendly Federation, or I want to go down the dark path, get a beard, and be evil Star Trek. I think it'd be cool, especially as it does lock it out, so you can get different playthroughs as the same race, which is cool. I like this in Imperator, as I said. I thought it was really cool how you could kind of differentiate how you played through as the same kind of campaign. But we'll see. Obviously, they didn't release much information about this, but from what you can see here, and there is some from the other races as well that look the same. Maybe for the Romulans, you can stay, Tal Shiar, secretive, trying to cause mischief, or maybe you can do reunification with the Vulcans or something like that. Now, the Vulcans aren't a main race in it, but I would imagine they'd be on the map, and maybe you can like unify up with the Vulcans and have a unified Vulcan-Romulan race, however they would name it. And yeah, that would be awesome if you can do that. And then as you can see from some more of the screenshots they released, they've got exactly the same features as we were discussing earlier that basically Stellaris has. So you have the species control, how you want to control them, so a soft hand, a hard hand, basic subsistence, subterfuge economy, and kind of how you want to control those species being inside your realm. Or you have the other UI here for diplomacy. And again, as I said at the beginning, I really think they should have changed this up. I don't know, it just looks so like Stellaris. I'm surprised they haven't done something with it to make it look different, to make it even play differently. I'm not sure how they could do it, but I just think the diplomacy that is in Stellaris, just, I don't know, I don't think it works for a Star Trek game. I'm sure it'll be okay, but there's a lot of things in here that you can see in the other videos that they released is they have the minor species that you have in Stellaris, but they're just randomly generated species. They're not like official Star Trek species that I could tell anyway from the names. I'm not a massive Star Trek nerd. I've watched all the series and things like that. I know quite a lot of Star Trek lore and things, but the minor species ones, they look like they were just generic names. And I kind of think that's a miss as well. I think having a map set up and it having things like Bajor, having other places on there, like as you can see from here, we have Riser, we have Vulcan, we have Khitomer for the Khitomer Accords, obviously, if you're a Star Trek fan. They've got the Romulan system, they've got Bereth. You know, they've got all the kind of places that you know. But outside of that, it looks like a lot of the minor nations are missing. Now, I guess they would come along in other DLC. You know, you've got those minor species, you've got the Breen, you've got Bajor, as I said, you've got the Ferengi. I suppose they're not really a minor civilization, but I guess in comparison to the others, they kind of are. And I'm surprised they're not in the game. I guess they might come in DLC later on. That would kind of make sense, I guess. They could add them in. But also with how Stellaris, the base game, works, I'm not sure how it would work exactly. Because you'd have to have them as like a relatively big civilization, but them also not be a main civilization. Although maybe they could be a main civilization. It wouldn't make sense either way, I guess, especially for some of the larger ones. But obviously that could come along in the future if the game is successful. I'm sure we will get some DLC, especially around the Borg. I'd be amazed if they didn't come as a DLC further down the line. The Borg just makes so much sense. Everyone loves the Borg in many ways, and I'm sure it would do really well. I'm kind of surprised they weren't in the beginning, but I suppose they wanted 4 like relatively normal races before they got onto the craziest stuff. Who knows, maybe the Q. I hope there's events in the game that are very Star Trek focused. I couldn't see anywhere any information about the events. Some of the best bit of Stellaris are how the events work and the crazy things you can have happen depending on which events you encounter and how you choose the events and how they play out. So I hope there are events in here. It would be amazing if there's like a Q series of events or something like that. Maybe the Founders turn up. I'd be very surprised if they do the Dominion Founders stuff. It looks like it is set up in the Delta Quadrant for the most part at the beginning. Now, the last thing I wanted to look at is the price. It is $39.99 here in Canada. Obviously, will vary where you live. And is that a reasonable price? Now, I'm not sure. As a standalone Star Trek game, it's a reasonable price. Stellaris is $10 more expensive in Canada, so it is cheaper than Stellaris, but it is obviously a smaller game than Stellaris. It looks like the map's a little bit smaller, and it's focused around 4 species. You can't just do whatever you want by the looks of it. You have to play one of the 4, which would make sense. And yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe it should be a little bit cheaper. It's not too bad, though. I think it is almost like, back in the day, you used to get a lot more games that had standalone expansions. It seems to have been something that's kind of gone away recently, but I think if this was almost just a standalone expansion, I guess they didn't want to do it this way because they want to launch it as Star Trek Infinite. They don't really want to show that it's Stellaris. Like, nowhere does it say based on the hit game Stellaris. I think it would almost be better if it did because people would then know the difference. Obviously, if you play Stellaris or if you've heard of Stellaris or you play Paradox games, you're going to immediately know it is. Like, if you just saw one of these screenshots, you'd go, okay, that just looks like Stellaris, as we've discussed. But I think maybe if it was called, like, I don't know, something like Stellaris Star Trek or something, I don't know. Someone will think of a way better name than that. Star Trek Infinite. A way better name than that. But I don't know whether that would help. Maybe it was like, from the worlds of Stellaris, Star Trek Infinite. I don't know. Obviously a bit of a too long of a title. But anyway, let me know what you think. I think it's fine for the price. It'd be interesting to see what other DLC we get. They've already announced if you pre-order it, you get some bonus DLC in a very Paradox style DLC setup, so I would imagine in the future we will get these different races and things like that, but I don't know. I think I might pick it up because I love Star Trek and I like Stellaris, so it makes sense for me to play it. Yeah, I don't know, maybe if it was like $5 or $10 cheaper, because I know there's obviously a lot of work got into it. I'm not just saying, oh, they've just reskinned it and put it up for sale. It's obviously a lot more work than that. They've got Nimble Giant making the game, so there has been a lot of work got into it, but I don't know, it's almost a full price game. I'm not too sure about it. I think maybe $5 or $10 cheaper. Like I say, if you enjoy Star Trek, if you enjoy Stellaris, or even if you only like one of those, I think it's going to be a fun game. From what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be an interesting game to play. It'll be fun. Will it be as in-depth as Stellaris? No, but you're getting that Star Trek kind of brush over it to make it a little bit different, but familiar at the same time. But anyway, that is just today's quick video. I just fancied talking about it today, so let me know what you think, as always, in the comments. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed it. And if you're new here, I'm found playing Crusader Kings most oftenly, and then I also play other historical titles on the channel. I cover dev diaries, news, discussion videos like this, all that good stuff. So hit subscribe if you've enjoyed it. There'll be plenty more coming in the future. But on that note, we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.